Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys.
Coming up on our trip to CPAC.
Yep, a couple of weeks now.
We're recording this on February the 7th. That's a Wednesday. And so this comes out on this Friday, right? The 9th?
Yep, the 9th. Yep.
You take care of our broadcast schedule. I just try to keep that up. But we will be broadcasting live from CPAC, both here on the Spreaker platform. Probably thinking an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. It's going to be kind of fluid depending on how many folks we can get to talk to us.
Yeah.
And what we may go longer, whatever. We'll be on Facebook Live as well. But be sure to check us out. Coming to you live from CPAC on Spreaker and Facebook. FAIRtax Guys, I tell you, we are looking forward to this for sure.
It's very exciting. And by the way, anybody out there, if you know how to get a hold of Governor Huckabee, make sure that he knows that he's got an open invitation to come and be interviewed by the FAIRtax Guys anytime we're up there at CPAC. I would love to talk to him.
Elaine will hunt him down with quite a bit of precision.
She's good at that.
Get him over there, too. So I say we are certainly happy to that. And, of course, if there's any other big political events that want to invite us to come to, we'll be happy to do that as well for either side of the aisle.
Absolutely.
Because the FAIRtax, it really appeals to everyone. There's something in there for everyone. And we just need to get the word out.
Yep.
But when we get up and talk to all the Congress critters up there, I'm going to have some fun with
I'm
some
pretty
of them.
sure I'm going to contact my congressman's office, Ted Yoho, make sure that he knows we're going to be up there. And you can contact your congressman.
Oh, I did. I tell you, he sent me the other day. I got something in the mail. He wanted me to sign a petition, to get him on the ballot without having to pay the filing fee. He was trying to do that. I sent it back to him and says, when you become an advocate for the FAIRtax and actually start representing me, I'll sign your petition. So
there you go.
There's a thought that if the congressman in your district, congressperson in your district wants you to sign a petition, just send it back. I mean, they give you a postage-paid envelope. You can send it back on his dime, right? Just send it back there. When you start representing me by actively supporting the FAIRtax, then I will sign your petition.
Yep, that's right.
See how that goes.
Hold their feet to the fire. That's the only way this is going to get done. That's why we do these podcasts, is to get you folks involved and so forth. Because when you're talking to your Congress critters, that's when it's going to get done. And just so let more people know about FAIRtax Power Radio so we can get more people on board and apply more pressure to these folks in Washington.
And right quick, let's give everyone our email address. TheFairtaxGuys@gmail.com is how you can get a hold of us by email. We do have a Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, just go to the FAIRtax Guys. You can leave us a comment and what have you. Certainly would like to hear from everybody. And I say we've got a little project going on right now, and we got some good feedback. Somebody sent us an email. Remember, we were asking that the FAIRtax may need a mascot.
Yeah.
Like the little green gecko that Geico's got or the ducks that Aflac has. We're looking for something for the FAIRtax. And somebody said, why didn't you just make our mascot a dollar bill? I'd rather be in your pocket than in the IRS. That's a good idea.
Yeah. You want to read this? I mean, we've gotten all kinds of suggestions. We've gotten a beagle, cute and loyal. We've gotten the FAIRtax raccoon, the tax bandit, because he's got a mask. The FAIRtax badger. There actually is a video on YouTube called Super FAIRtax Man. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek cartoon, but it gets the message across.
But if you've got an idea, we'd like to hear from it. TheFairtaxGuys@gmail.com, or drop it on our Facebook page, and we'll if it's a goodie, we'll tell the world about your thoughts here.
And the people who are, some of our marketing people, they like this idea, so we want to pursue this.
Go ahead and read it.
This was sent to the FAIRtax Guys. And he said, how about we keep this one simple, the dollar bill, or perhaps $100 bill. The general theme for him would be how he would rather come home safe in your pocket than be sent to D.C. as an income tax where he will be pulled, tugged, twisted, as all the lobbyists and politicians vie for him from the start. He knows you would spend him on things that matter, not wasted on something like funding a study on whether or not water really does spin in the opposite direction going down the drain in the southern hemisphere. And when it's his turn to be sent to D.C. as part of a sales tax, he'll know that only after you have been given that'll happen only after you've been given a chance to use him responsibly for your family. And then he closes with, all dollars matter. And
I like that.
Scott Monroe, thank you very much for this. We think that's not only is the dollar bill a good idea for a mascot, but he included a scenario as to how it could be used, which I think is very useful. So
let that be an inspiration for you. If you've got an idea and you can support it like that, send it to us, the FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com, or put it on our Facebook page. And
yeah. And
how much longer is this going to? Who's going to make the decision? I'm not sure about that.
I have no idea.
Okay.
It started as a Florida thing, but I think it's spreading to the national group too. So
okay, well, let them worry about it.
Yep.
But something else that we've been doing here on Fair Tax Power Radio that we haven't done for the past couple of episodes, we're keeping our eye on Congress.gov.
Oh.
Again, we are trying to keep track of how many changes to the income tax code have been proposed in this Congress, which has been, in session for about a year now, maybe a little over a year now. And as of right now, if you go to Congress.gov and you type the string Internal Revenue Code and close that in quotes so you get those three words as a string, and see how many times that appears in current legislation, it is now up to 1,166 references to the tax code have been introduced into Congress. And I found something the other day. I'm surprised I didn't think of this earlier. Usually when you do a search like that and you get back a lot of results, they have multiple ways to sort them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the default is just by relevancy, and but I have found out if you go to Congress.gov and pull up that search on Internal Revenue Code, you can sort it by date of introduction, so we can see how quickly these changes are coming. As we mentioned earlier, we are recording this episode on Wednesday, February the 7th, and looking at the Congress.gov, there was a S-2378 was introduced yesterday, which would have been Tuesday. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide an exclusion from gross income for interest on certain small business loans. That coming from Senator Rounds of South Dakota. But if you back up one more day, back to Monday, 4 bills were introduced on Monday.
4.
Well, 2 of them are companion legislation, the same thing in the House and the same thing in the Senate.
So 3 new bills.
So there are actually 3 different new ones here, but one was introduced in both places. This is my favorite one by far. Of all of the absurd things we found in the tax code over the course of doing this one I think takes the cake. It's S-2371, introduced by Senator Stabenow of Michigan, introduced on Monday the 5th. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to, get this, modify the definition of municipal solid waste. You tell me, is there any other country on the face of the earth whose tax code includes a definition of municipal solid waste? And why in the world is that in there? They don't have the text of that bill available yet, but that's up there.
Oh, you think?
Can you believe that our tax code is defining municipal solid waste?
And, for the life of me, I can't. How is that connected to the tax code? I guess you have to be an attorney and somebody in Congress to understand that.
I can think of the tax code as another type of solid waste.
Well,
but we won't go there.
That's true. It is connected in that way, yes.
But anywhere. That's how we're... And this, again, after the Senate and the House passed this big tax reform thing that they're calling tax reform, that it is really tax relief. And again, we're thankful for the relief, but it is not tax reform, and we have got to stay active on making sure that they actually reform the fundamentals of this, change the way the system works. Don't just change some numbers and parameters within it. Change the way the system works. Get rid of the income tax entirely. Get rid of the withholding. Get rid of the payroll taxes. Give everybody a prebate every month, i.e. pass the fair tax. That is real reform.
Yep. And Bob is right, 1,166 proposals so far. I've been dating these things. I took a look on January 10th, and it was 1,133. So from January 10th to February 7th, less than a month, they've added 33 more bills. All right? So more proposals to change the tax code. Now, admittedly, not all of these will become law, but some of them will. So if they had all this hoopla over the tax reform, and that's the be-all and end-all, why are they still submitting more proposals to change the tax code? Just goes to show you that there is no stability to the income tax. No stability. And it makes it very difficult to plan.
Now, you brought a little graph with you.
Yep.
That I thought was really telling. If you go back, it goes back in time and shows you how big the tax code was at various different points in time. And it's very telling that in 1984, the tax code was 26,300 pages. Now, in 1995, this was after the big tax reform of 1986, remember?
Yep.
40,500, nearly doubled, which means last time tax reform, like we've just seen this past little thing happen, just set the lobbyists ablaze.
Yeah, that's right.
You wouldn't believe, the tax almost doubled after the reforms of 1986 because the lobbyists went back to work, changing what the Congress critters temporarily put into place for you.
Yep, 1986. They supposedly reformed the tax code, but by the time they write the legislation, and then the bureaucrats in the IRS write the regulations, and then the instructions on how to comply with the regulations, and then you add the court cases to that, you have all these pages, tens of thousands of pages. And in less than 10 years, they went from 26,300 up to 40,500. I mean, that's a huge increase in less than 10 years.
If you look at this graph, that is the biggest jump there is from one year to the next, from 84 to 95. That's basically 10 years.
Yep.
But then it goes on from there. From 95 to 2004, almost another 10 years, it only went from 40,000 to 60,000, not as much, because there wasn't a major reform. Now, let's see. What we've got now is over 74,000 pages.
Yeah, and that was in 2014. That was four years ago.
And now with our new tax reform, and I'm going to use their term, not the real one, that we've just seen, we'll just see how much is added to it over the next few years because the lobbyists undoing changes that were just done.
And Congress.gov that we were just talking about gives you an indication of what's happening. They are day by day submitting more proposals to change the tax code. They will never cease and desist as long as we have an income tax. And there's one way to take care of that.
Oh, it's all municipal solid waste. We need to pass the FAIRtax.
Yeah.
We've spent a good bit of time here getting going here, but we want to, we just had the State of the Union message not long ago. And we, the FAIRtax Guys, have volunteered to go forward to a joint session of Congress.
That's right.
And deliver our speech on the State of Taxation.
That's right.
So now that it may take us 2 episodes to do all this because you got a whole big pile of stuff over there. But I can give you the thumbnail, summary. The State of Taxation. Remember, the president stood up and said the State of the Union is strong. The State of Taxation, it sucks. Can I say that on the floor of Congress? Who knows?
Well, you might get a few eyebrows, but
anyhow.
Can you imagine the FAIRtax Guys in a joint session of Congress? Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, and my fellow citizens. The state of taxation is terrible in the United States.
It sure is. And you've got a good bit of research over there, kind of broken down into 3 categories: the compliance cost, the evasion, and the ID theft. We've been talking about evasion here on FAIRtax Power Radio for a little while. So let's go ahead and start with the compliance cost. We've hit on that a good bit in the past, too. But folks do not understand a lot of times, and understand, too, when a tax compliance cost is imposed on a business, be it ExxonMobil or the mom and pop grocery store down the street, when those compliance costs are imposed on a business, they get passed on to the consumers.
That's
so
right.
The consumer pays the compliance costs. The business has to write a check to their tax accountants and their attorneys and folks like that. But those costs are just like the cost of materials, just like the cost of labor, just like the cost of any other cost of doing business that is rolled into the price of the goods and services that the business has produced. So all of these compliance costs come out of your pocket.
If you do a little research online for compliance costs, there's any number of sources that will show you. And they usually, like Bob was just talking about the graphic that we have that shows the number of pages in the tax code, and all, everything that constitutes the tax code, including the court cases. Well, there's one neat little graph that shows that from 1913
that was when the income tax was introduced, 1913, when it first came into being.
Yeah, up and through the 40s, the complexity was nil. I mean, it was 400 or 500 pages total. Everything, 400 or 500 pages. All right. Then suddenly in the 40s, it started going up. Well, there was 2 things that happened in the 40s. One, withholding. All right. President Roosevelt started Social Security, and they needed a way of funding Social Security, so they started withholding. Secondly, World War II broke out, and we had a big effort, for the war effort.
The war effort was the excuse for all of this other stuff. We now need your money now, and we're going to take it from you before you even get your hands on it. So we, at this point, become your highest spending priority. You will feed us before you feed the family.
And because the war was very expensive, they raised income taxes up to in the 90s. I mean, they had income tax rate in the 90 percentiles for some of the upper, incomes. And what happened is that those people stopped giving to charities because, 90% of their income was going to the federal government. So they stopped giving. And then the charities started complaining, hey, our funding is drying up. What's going on here? You got to do something about it. So Congress said, oh, okay, we'll put in the tax code a deduction. So we'll let you deduct what you give to charities under certain regulations. We'll be able to deduct that from your taxable income. Well, that's language in the tax code, instructions, regulations, court cases, and that's when the complication in the tax code just exploded from about 400 or 500 pages to tens of thousands of pages in just a short time.
And it's going up exponentially now.
Yeah, it is.
It's insane. So the compliance costs are really, and they go away. Compliance costs all but go away under the fair tax. Because remember, when you're dealing with a fair tax, your point of sale software keeps track of your sales. Of course, it keeps track, if you're a business, of how much tax you've collected, how much sales tax you've collected on that. And states have been doing that for decades. So the software vendors that make these point of sale systems have already got built into their system a way to track how much tax you collect, sales tax you collect. And adding the fair tax to that, just a few lines of code, no problem at all. Yeah, so the compliance costs for the business go down to next to nothing.
Yep. I mean, Bob and I live in Florida, and that's one of the reasons that industry likes Florida, because there is no income tax. And not only is they can legally avoid an income tax that's not there, but the compliance costs are much lower. So Florida's been doing very well economically. We've got a lot of businesses being attracted here, and that's part of the reason. Now,
okay, well, let me ask you something real quick on,
sure.
on a bit of a tangent. We've seen what's been going on in the economy now. All of these companies giving bonuses, giving raises to their because the tax rate went from 39% to 21%. Mm-hmm. What do you think would happen if the corporate tax rate went from 21% to zero? Which is what happens under the fair tax.
That's right. That's right. So they're making the case for us. This tax bill that was signed by the president in December, they're making the case for the fair tax, that dropping the tax rates is good for business. The repatriation tax, that's dropped from 35% to I think 14%. Well, and that's quite a drop. I mean, that's significant. That's dramatic. And so we've got announcement from companies, that multinational companies that are bringing billions of dollars that was sitting offshore, American dollars, made by American companies in their sales overseas. That money's coming back to this country. They're going to be more construction. They're going to be building more plants and so forth, hiring many more people. And that's just within the first few weeks of this tax code. So they're making the case for the fair tax because, one, you reduce the rate of taxation for corporations to zero, and two, you drop the compliance by about 80 or 90%, and that makes it more profitable. You make it more profitable for businesses to do business, they do more business and they hire more people.
Yeah, keep in mind, though, when people hear the idea the corporate tax rate is going to be zero, oh, wait a minute, these big rich corporations need to pay their fair share. No, those big rich corporations pass those compliance costs and their tax liability on to you.
Yeah.
So when the tax rate on them goes down to zero, their costs drop dramatically, and the competitive pressures in the free marketplace are going to mean their prices are going to drop accordingly.
Yeah, companies compete with each other now. Companies that make similar toasters or coffee makers or TVs or whatever, they compete with each other. Why would they be competing now and try to offer the best product for the dollar. But under the fair tax, all competition will stop. That doesn't make any sense. It's very naive.
That's a talking point that is just not based in truth, I'm afraid. Now that I've completely derailed your train of thought, you can get back to where you were going.
Yeah, we were talking about compliance costs, okay? This is a report by the Tax Foundation. I have to thank my wife for this, because when I told her what Bob and I were going to be talking to, she immediately jumps in there and starts finding this stuff for us, this good stuff. This is from June of 2016. Compliance costs of the IRS regulations. Key findings. The growing complexity of the U.S. tax code has led to large compliance costs for households and business. Why households? Well, because they buy stuff that businesses make. And if the businesses are experiencing higher costs of producing their products or service, we are paying for them.
Because the compliance cost is rolled into the price of the products and services. We cannot say that enough times.
Yep. So let's see. Using data from the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it is possible to estimate the cost of tax compliance in the U.S. economy. And Americans...
let's have fun. Let's break that down by IRS form.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They have a nice little chart here on the next page. It starts on the next page, and it goes to the third page, where they list the 49 most common business forms that people have to deal with. And what they've done is, for each one, they have listed a figure of how many hours it takes for businesses to comply with that form and how many dollars that costs. And then when they get to number 50...
just a catch-all pot, everything else.
Yeah, they have the top 49, and then number 50 says, all remaining IRS regulations.
But what do you think is at the top of that list? The U.S. business income tax return.
Yeah.
That costs more time and more money than any other IRS form out there.
Yep.
And there are a lot more individuals than there are businesses, so that tells you how much more complex the business side of this thing is than the individual side of it, and all goes away under the fair tax. Remember, it all goes away under the fair tax. And this is how much money and how much time is getting passed on to you, the consumer, when you buy goods and services in this economy.
Yeah. And, like I said, they break it down for each form and the number of hours and the cost in dollars. Remember, the number of hours, that's people working. When we say, well, it creates jobs. Well, yeah, it creates jobs for bookkeepers, CPAs, tax attorneys, and so forth, whatever, they're involved there. But it's not helping the company produce more stuff, all right? It's not helping the company make a better product or provide a better service. What it is the company trying to keep its, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but trying to keep themselves out of jail, trying to comply with the tax code, all right? So it's money that's being spent that's not really improving what's going on. It's just making sure that they're doing, obeying the tax code. If we can drop those costs by 80 or 90%, wouldn't that be good for business?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, and the whole thing, when they add it all up, 8.9 billion hours. How many jobs is that?
That's a bunch. But I tell you what, looking just at the business income tax return, that's almost just shy of $3 billion. 2,832,500,000 is how many hours that this is estimated that it takes to comply with the to file U.S. business income tax forms. $147,431,625,000 is spent on just that one form. Yep. And the individual income tax return is right behind it, 2,647,000,000 hours. And $98 billion plus on the U.S. individual income tax return. And all of that goes away under the fair tax.
Yep. Well, for businesses, most of it goes away. For individuals, yes, all of it goes away, because for individuals, there will be no tax returns. You'll have no obligation to file anything. Your income is your business and nobody else's under the fair tax. Corporations will still have a little bit of paperwork to do, but nothing like they're experiencing now. And before I came to the studio, I was just in a meeting with some other business people, and one of the ladies said, this would be so great for our business to drop, get rid of that income tax and all that stuff we have to do. People in business, especially small business, they recognize that. So,
and when your computer system does it all for you, when you're doing a sales tax, then there's very little man hours involved in it. And I'll tell you what, we've had so much fun here. Our time is really flying away from us on this thing.
Okay.
And so we will definitely continue this on the next episode here of FairtaX Power Radio. Picks up next week. But we need to mention some of the things that we have not been mentioning in the past few episodes, how folks can get involved. Again, we invite people to write us at thefairtaxguys@gmail.com or like us on our Facebook page and leave us a message there. But there's something new here. We used to have something called FairtaX Rewards, but now that's been shifted over to Ebates. You've seen the commercials on TV about Ebates. This is a website you go to where if you go there first and then from there launch to your online shopping site of choice, then you get a little kickback from Ebates.
Yep.
But there's a twist in that you can help the FairtaX with.
Yeah. When you get onto Ebates, and I've already done this, you set it all up, you set up an account, which is free, doesn't cost you anything, and then on their website you specify where your address is so they can send you your Ebates check every once in a while, okay? Once you establish where your Ebates check is going to go, you can deflect it, you might say. You can say, all right, I'd rather have my Ebates check go to this cause or this person. So once you set it up yourself, you can send it to the Americans for Fair Taxation, and they're on their website. Go to fairtax.org and get their address and so forth, and you can make sure that your Ebates go to AFFT. AFFT needs the funding so we can start running some ads, so they can start running some ads. Bob and I are in Florida, and we're part of the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. The national group needs your help, and this is a good way to help fund the national group so that they can start doing some serious marketing and get the message out.
Now, there is a little bit of security protocol, some hoops you've got to jump through in order to deflect your income tax or your rebate back to the AFFT, which is a good thing. I mean, you don't want somebody just going in and changing your rebate to their address.
Yeah, exactly.
So they'll send you an email with some kind of verification in it. And so there is some security procedure you have to go through to do that. But it's not that, Ron, if you can do it, I think most folks can do it, right?
That's right. Yep.
All right.
In my advanced years. Yep.
We've got this new thing. We're trying to figure out how we're going to name it. FairtaX Connect, FairtaX Central. It's a way that everybody that is supporting the FairtaX can get together and become a nationwide community on this thing. Member.fairtax.org.
Yep.
That's relatively new.
Yep. It's, in fact, if we used to tell everybody to go to bigsolution.org. That's okay. You can go to bigsolution.org because that will send you over to member.fairtax.org. The national group has a new company managing their database, and as part of that service, they have a social media type site that's just for fair tax supporters. So it's kind of like Facebook, but it's only for fair tax people. So you go to member.fairtax.org. There's a survey there. Tell them what you want to call it. FairtaX Central, whatever it is, and log your vote in. But please join up. You can make a donation if you wish. That would be good. But otherwise, you can just join up and talk about the fair tax with people all around the country.
And, of course, fairtax.org is still there. Lots of good resource material in there, FAQs if you want to know how it works or how it would affect a certain thing. Bigsolution.org is still there. If you want to get involved, we'd certainly invite you to do that. But that's going to wrap it up. Do it to it for this edition of FairtaX Power Radio. Talk about time flying when you're having fun.
It's amazing.
We will continue with the FairtaX Guys State of Taxation speech on the next episode of FairtaX Power Radio. But until then, this is Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
We are the FairtaX Guys. Again, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming. Don't send in